Okay, so welcome to Tarot 101 with Kate Sheridan. My name is Laura. I am the Public Programming and Community Relations Librarian at Portsmouth Public Library in New Hampshire. Is everybody kind of from New Hampshire? You can write if you're from elsewhere and just randomly found us on Facebook. You can write that in the chat. We're going to be going until 9 p.m. tonight, and we hopefully will be very respectful of your time. A sec, there we go. And I've already mentioned, so just for the few new people who came in, that we are recording, and this video will be available on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So if you enjoyed it and want to share it with friends, we will post the link in on the Facebook event page. And as Kate just said, if you'd like to ask questions, you can write them in the chat while she's presenting, and she will try and get to them. And we can also stop and ask them out loud. But for the majority of tonight's program, we will have everyone muted. Okay, so I mentioned who I am. If you are a Portsmouth resident, let me quickly say that we are offering curbside pickup for books, as well as computer use and study carrel space by appointment. If you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. And I also wanted to let you know that if you go to our website and look under borrow and download and click get recommendations, you can actually fill out a little form, tell us what kinds of books and movies you're into, and we will make you a surprise book bundle that you can pick up for curbside pickup. So we have lots of ingenious ways that we're trying to help you find books even while you can't browse. I also want to say that we love hearing what you want to see at the library. So you can always look for me outside, or you can send me an email. My email's on the website, and suggest any programs that you'd like to see us do online. We're always happy to hear that. One, I just wanted to mention that we have a lot of really great stuff in the works for October, but something we do every week, which you might enjoy if you're here for tarot, is our weekly meditation, which is every Wednesday from 12:15 to 1 p.m. You might not feel like it on your lunch break, but I promise you it will make the rest of your day go better. And that's taught by all different local practitioners, all different types of meditation, and it's always appropriate for beginners. And we have a great little community that started coming every Wednesday. So if you've never meditated before, or if you just like to be with other people, we encourage you to check that out. And like I said, it's every Wednesday, no registration necessary. The link will be at the top of the library's website on the day. So now I think it's time for me to talk about Kate. So Kate is an educator and a former high school teacher, and you can follow her on Instagram at The Modern Laundress, which we'll put a link to in the chat. And I just want to say that this is the second time we've offered this program, because the first one was so popular, and I would say for good reason. I got so excited after the first program that I bought a tarot deck online the very same day. So I'm really glad that you all are here to see Kate, and I'm going to turn it right over to her. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you so much, Laura. I'm so excited to hear that you're converted into this really, really addictive and fun, and I would say holographic hobby, in the sense that once you think you know everything, you spiral around and realize that you don't know anything, and there's more to learn about tarot. It's really the gift that just keeps on giving. So I'm so glad to hear that it's stuck. So I'm going to paste, I got my first question. So oracle cards. Yeah, so if you have oracle cards tonight, that's great. This is the difference between tarot and oracle cards is a lot and kind of not a lot. So they both are sets of cards that you engage with to practice divination, to have a psychic experience, or maybe even see into the future, maybe a little ways into the future, and really just tap into your intuition. Oracle cards are typically decks that are channeled directly by the artist and the writer and/or writer. Sometimes that's the same person, sometimes it's multiple people, but they're kind of like channeled. Tarot cards actually follow a structure that is actually the ancestor of modern playing cards. So a lot of what we're going to talk about tonight is what I would call tarot theory. So it's like the structure of how this deck, there's the different categories of cards and how they work together. That's a little bit different from oracle cards, which are usually more just kind of, there's like, I don't know how to, there aren't categories, there aren't suits, in other words. So we're going to talk about traditional 78 card tarot, but some of the like principles of how it works are exactly the same. It's divination, right? So we'll talk about that as well. Okay, in the chat, I'm going to paste my information, contact info, how you can get to me, and I'm going to do a shameless plug for some of my projects right now, and I'll paste this at the end if I remember to. So a couple things in the chat. I'm Kate Sheridan. My tarot alias is the laundress, or the modern laundress. You can email me, you can find me on Instagram. I have a Facebook page for my tarot work. On both the Facebook and the Instagram, you'll see that I offer my services as a reader. So if you like what you see tonight and you want to connect with me more and maybe work with me in that capacity, you can find me on those platforms. And then I have some other projects that are kind of tangentially related maybe, but I want you to know about them. So as Laura said, I'm a former English teacher. So I left the classroom, but I have some projects that in my mind are taking what I loved best about teaching and bringing them into a new space. So I'm leading women's circles for anyone who identifies as a woman, and they are to celebrate the Celtic holidays. So the first one was Lammas, which was in August, and the first Harvest Festival. And soon, in 8 days, on September 16th, we're going to celebrate Mabon, which is the second Harvest Festival. So that's on Zoom. So if you want to check that out. And then if you have children or you know children, I also want to offer my services as a tutor this fall, because everything's happening on Zoom, and I imagine this is quite difficult for some children. And so I want to be available, and I'm calling it intuitive tutoring. So you can check that out. I'm building a real live website, but for now I have a Facebook page. Okay, enough plugging. Let's get to our PowerPoint. So I'm going to hop into my Google Drive and share a PowerPoint. Takes several clicks, but we're getting there. Okay. All right, so can everybody see that?
Yep, looks good.
Awesome, cool. Okay, so here's my info. These materials are presented in good faith. I will have, Laura's gonna help me send this PowerPoint actually to you. So in addition to the recording, you'll have these slides. So please use them in good faith. I think we all know what that means. And there are other tarotists that I have quoted and put their names on certain slides. So again, take note, and you can use that to find some more resources, which I'll also send a list of my favorite books. Okay, so just for fun, since there's kind of a big crowd tonight, this is mostly for you all to read, not so much for me, but I thought it might be fun in lieu of introducing ourselves verbally in the chat. If you want to introduce yourself and maybe say where you are, because some of us are not in the Portsmouth area, and just taking a look at these images, which image is jumping out at you as matching your mood tonight? So I'll go first. And you could type yours in the chat, but I'll say mine out loud. My name is Kate, and tonight I think I'm feeling like the High Priestess. And I don't have to know anything about what that card means. I just look at it and I just think, I've been thinking about tarot all day. I revamped my PowerPoint. I'm feeling really kind of mystical and like, you know, I'm in my temple tonight and you're all coming to see me and I'm going to talk about tarot and I feel like the High Priestess. So that image is speaking to me. So you don't have to know anything about what the cards mean. Really, the first step is just connect with the images. They're archetypal images. They live inside you already. So just for fun, if you want to type something in the chat, please feel free to do that, no pressure, and you can kind of just see what other people are feeling tonight. So we'll leave this up for a few moments. You can choose one. All right, awesome. So if you have one in mind, we'll keep going in the chat. The chat can become another channel and I'll do my best to check into it. Okay, so, overview. So this image shows all of a tarot deck. So a traditional tarot deck includes 78 cards. So I mentioned that they're the ancestors of modern playing cards. So why not, where's the difference between 52 cards and 78 cards? So one thing is that if you look towards the right-hand side of this image, you will see in each of the 4 suits, you will see 4 face cards or court cards. So in playing cards, we all know that we have Jack, Queen, and King. Well, in the tarot, the Jack is actually split into 2 different traditional cards, the Page and the Knight. So we have 4 court cards, the Page, Knight, Queen, and King. And then the first 2 rows, the top 2 rows, the shorter ones on the top, are what are known as the major arcana. So these are the more archetypal cards. So I mentioned the High Priestess, we have the Magician, we have the Devil, right? These are, and we're going to talk more in more depth about archetypes later. So these are kind of like metaphors and symbols that are shared by humans all over the world. And those are known as the major arcana. The only major card that has survived in playing cards is the first one, number 0, who is the Fool, aka the Joker. And for some reason, he got doubled in the playing cards, the history of which I don't know. So the word arcana is a plural word. Arcanum means key or secret. So all of these cards, the first 2 rows are known as the majors, the bottom 4 rows are known as the minors. All of these cards are keys. They're secrets. And what they're keys to are spiritual principles, essentially. So this tool is a tool for spiritual growth. That's really what we're here to talk about tonight. Okay, there are 22 major arcana, so it's numbers 0 through 21. And you can see those in the top 2 rows. So the way we're gonna talk tonight, I kind of have like 4 parts to the evening. I'll do a little more overview and a tiny bit of history. Then we'll launch into the minor arcana. Then we'll do the major arcana. And then we should have time to do kind of like a demo and a more practical hands-on type of thing. And we'll kind of pause for questions at the end of each of those sections. But again, maybe I'll be able to multitask with the chat. It's kind of funny because I have to pop it up like over my slides, but I'll do my best. Okay, so that's the overview of the images. History, so from what we know, the earliest tarot decks that we've found, we humans, historians, are from Renaissance Italy. So that's the 15th century. It was definitely a card game. It's like a parlor game. But eventually at some point, certainly by the end of the 18th century, we know that they were being used for divination, meaning psychic information, psychic tools. Maybe predicting the future, but I'll say something about that later. So these images are some of the earliest decks. The top images, the kind of primary color ones, are the Marseille Tarot. That's kind of like the template that traditional tarot decks are built off of, including the Rider-Waite deck, which we'll be working with tonight, which we've already seen the image. So, okay, from there, from Renaissance Italy, the cards are thought to have proliferated through Europe because of the Romani people, sometimes known as gypsies, but that is considered a slur. So I try to avoid that word, although you see it everywhere. I try to avoid that word. So the Romani people, semi-nomadic, traveled all throughout Europe, and the cards ended up all around the European world and beyond, really. There are some schools of thought that kind of claim that the tarot actually come from ancient Egypt, and that's kind of unclear. The historical truth of that is, I think, quite unclear. That became kind of a famous idea with the publication of this famous Rider-Waite pack. So those are the classic images that you see in movies and just everywhere, right? The cover of the Led Zeppelin album, the Hermit, right? It's like very classic iconography. So that was actually pretty recent. That was published in 1910. So this is not, these images that we know are not ancient by any means. This was kind of in the heyday of like spiritualism, and kind of like the occult esoteric world was having a real heyday at the turn of that century. So Rider was the publisher, so I don't care about him. Waite was the occultist who commissioned the pack, and he was one of these guys that was really into ancient Egypt. So you'll see Egyptian iconography and also Hebrew letters and Kabbalah, lots of Kabbalah, numerological information. It's basically like they layered on a bunch of occultist symbology onto that kind of original Marseille like structure. The artist rarely gets any credit. She's pictured here. Her name is Pamela Coleman Smith. Her nickname was Pixie. She was an Aquarius, if you wanted to know, which is not surprising if you know anything about astrology. And so there's really a big movement these days to really recuperate her legacy and to give her the credit she deserves, because so often we talk about the Rider-Waite pack, these two men that funded it or whatever, and the artist was actually this adorable, amazing woman, Pixie. So there she is. We give her props. Okay, so how does it work? What is tarot? So the way it works is that you shuffle the cards, and usually you have some kind of ritual around that, and I'll show you mine at the end. And then you put them into a spread. So you don't have to do this. You can just go to your deck and kind of go like free form and do kind of like intuitive reading. And I do that all the time. That's not something that I would recommend for a beginner, simply because it's like anything, you're going to get out what you put in. So if you approach your reading with extreme clarity about what you are asking, then your chances of getting a meaningful reading and getting like an intuitive hit, you might say, are going to be greatly increased. If you go and to your deck and you're feeling scattered and you don't really know what it is that you're asking, that's you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Or not, or you might just have some crazy experience. That happens all the time too. But usually we use a spread. So spreads could be any number of cards. The most famous spread in the world is the Celtic Cross spread, and it's on the left on this slide. So this is really interesting because basically every tarot book that you buy is going to have some version of this 10-card spread, and many of you have probably seen it before and maybe attempted it. And I just want to say for the record that I almost never use a spread with 10 cards. That is a lot of cards. So, you know, you can take from that what you will, but I really recommend, especially if you're just starting out, start with like 3 cards. You can go just as deep with 3 cards as you can with 10, I promise you. So as opposed to this Celtic Cross, and I said Celtic clock, Celtic Cross model, which is again the most famous spread in the world, making up your own spread that's like 3 cards or even 2 cards I think is great. Or there's tons of resources out there, and I've included an Instagram post from Lindsay Mack, so she's at Wild Soul Healing, and I'll send her information to you after tonight. She's like the tarot mama. She's just really an incredible gift to the culture, to the community. And so this is a great example of a 3-card spread that she invented. And you can also see that the questions are very kind of soul-centered. So the first question says, what am I being invited to leap into this month? Which card is helping me to trust this leap? Where am I ready to undergo a rebirth? Those are, to me, those are really deep, soul-centered, personal growth-oriented questions, as opposed to some of the things on the left. Like if you look at card 6, near future, right? Card 10, your potential future. So part of my my orientation towards tarot that I really want to share with you tonight is really getting away from the fortune telling stereotype and model that the purpose of tarot is to predict the future. I'm not saying that that's not possible, because crazy things are possible, you guys, but that model to me, it diminishes what this tool is really about, which is about growth in the now moment. So what tarot really does is provides us a window into the energy that is present in our field at this moment. And that includes like vibrations from the past and vibrations from the future, but it's really about the now moment. And just as a side note, I forgot to say earlier, and I always want to mention this, I think it's so important. I really believe that a lot of the cultural like preconceived notions about tarot are actually rooted in racism against the Romani people. So it's like this idea that a tarot reader is someone who's trying to scam you and lie to you and steal your money. That idea is actually a racist idea. And I really believe that from my experience with the magic of this tool, and also the fun kind of nerdy historical research that I've done over the years. So that's something I always want to say, because I just want to liberate us from that whole idea of like that it's like fake or something. It's a tool for self-reflection that's as real as you want it to be. So I actually have a quote that's kind of in keeping with that idea. Tarot goes really well with Jungian psychology, if you're interested in that at all. This is this great famous quote you may have seen by Carl Jung. "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So this to me encapsulates really what the gift of tarot is. It is a tool for making the unconscious rise up to the conscious mind. It is an empowering tool that I think really highlights the difference between the idea of destiny and the idea of fate. So they're kind of synonyms, right? But fate has this connotation of something that is like written before we're born, and we don't have any choice, and we just have to like take our lumps and that's it. Destiny to me has this other more empowering connotation that's kind of about like, what's my path? Like, why did I incarnate here? What's mine to do in this lifetime? You know, that's the question of destiny. And in my mind, tarot is all about destiny. If you're coming to it with the attitude, like, tell me my fate, and you're coming with a passive attitude, I think that's fine, but I think it's not nearly as rich in experience. I feel compelled maybe to look at the chat. Let's just take a peek. Okay, cool. People saying hi. Awesome. Okay, so on that note, we'll just talk a little bit about the types of questions. If you are designing your own spreads, again, any book you get, there's tons of websites, you can find spreads out there, but you can also invent your own spreads or even just pull one card. So I want to highlight the difference between what I would call disempowering and empowering questions. So you can see that the disempowering questions are very passive, and then the empowering ones are more active. So instead of what's going to happen in the future, it's much more rich, I think, to ask, what do I need to know right now? So instead of will I get the job, how about what energy should I bring to the interview? And the classic tarot question, does he love me? Or am I going to meet a tall, dark, and handsome stranger, right? That's the stereotype. Instead of that, tarot is so good for learning about, like, asking about lessons. Like, what is the lesson in this moment? I'm feeling lovesick. I'm feeling heartbroken. I'm feeling lonely. You know, what's the lesson? That's really what all of these card images, that's what they really want to do for you. They want to help you learn lessons. And then the last piece before we take a real pause for questions is just this idea of reversals. So if you've gotten started at all with tarot, and if you've kind of dabbled at all, then you've probably run up against this question this is very intimidating for a lot of people. And this is one reason why people like get started and then they just kind of quit, because they feel like, I just don't get it. And it's reversals. So some readers don't use them at all. you have total permission to say, like, that's not for me. I want to keep it simple. I'm every card that comes, I'm just going to flip it right side up. It's totally fine. Because even if you do use reversals, the idea here is that each card is a key or a secret that is energetic in nature. So again, using this tool, it's like a thermometer on energy. So if I pull the Five of Wands pictured here, Five of Wands energy is present in my field, in my psychic field, in my life, whether it's upright or reversed. It's just that when it's reversed, it has a different flavor, kind of. And it can mean a number of different things, and determining like what a reversal means, I think requires, it becomes, what am I trying to say? You need to look at the other cards around and have more of that bird's eye view reading, and it will usually become clear. And I think I actually have an example on the next slide. I added in an example where I'll speak a little bit more about that. But I feel like this is a great moment for questions if there are any. So if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and weave your voice in, please do. Or let's just I'll open up the chat for just a moment. If there's any question that anyone has at this moment, I feel like this is a good time. All right, so I added this slide. I'm excited. I think this will help everything gel. And then after this, we're going to go into more of the nitty gritty, what I would call tarot theory, right? So some of this won't make perfect sense, but by the end of the night, this should make sense. So I did this spread today for myself. So I'll reveal a little bit about my life. So Lindsay Mack, 3-card spread, and you can see the questions there on the left. And then these are my tools on the right. This is my spread. So what I've done actually on this slide is just show you like journaling that I would do. You know, I have a notebook that I keep just for tarot where I do this kind of journaling. So I pulled these cards to these questions for myself, and this is how I wrote it out. I wrote, I am being invited to take a leap. That was from the question. So the underlined parts are the part from the spread that I chose in advance to do. So I'm being invited to take a leap that will end a period of indecision. And my intuition told me, based on a lot of factors, that the reversal on that first card is telling me that some phase is ending. So in this particular case, I decided, or I intuited, right, that the reversal means like ending. And the phase is about indecision. The number 2 has to do with choice and decision, and therefore also indecision, right? And well, what is it about? It's about expressing my passion and creativity. And that is what I got from the suit that the card fell in, which is Wands, which is associated with the element of fire. And we're going to go into a lot more detail about that. So that's how I kind of parsed it out. Based on that first card, I knew that the rest of what I was really talking about was my indecision. And guess what? I've been really indecisive lately. So I already knew before I even asked the cards what my problem was, right? And that's the beauty of tarot. It's never going to show you anything that you don't already know. It's never going to show you anything that you don't already know. So judgment at this moment in my life is helping me trust this calling, whatever my different callings that I have, to make some decisions and do something, Kate, right? So that trust was from the spread. Judgment is about hearing a calling, but it's reversed. And what I got from this was that I need to avoid this habit that I have of thinking that every decision is life or death. And so in this case, I felt that the reversal was really, it was like a lessened energy, or it was like a comfort. It was comforting. It was like, judgment is the card we pull. You know, judgment is like when I decided I should quit teaching. Oh, you know, it was a big deal. But the reversal here I saw as like, don't worry, it's not really that big a deal, right? That interpretation was based on a couple things. It was based on my intuition, and it was based on its relationship to the other cards, and it was based on the question from the spread, right? So the question said, what card is helping? If the question had said, you know, what shadow do you need to deal with, or what, you know, what unfortunate, what ugly truth do you need to face? There you go. If the question had said, what ugly truth do you need to face? And you pull Judgment reversed, right? That's a whole different enchilada from the question that I have here. And so it's all of those pieces together, you know, wrapped up in your intuitive faculties. That's how you kind of really understand what a card means, and then especially reversals. So that's a lot to kind of take in if you're totally new, but I think as you get going, you'll know exactly what I mean. And then finally, to close out the reading, as I make each new decision, so again, the decision piece was really informed by the Two of Wands. I put it in bold there. There will be a great potential, that's Ace, for a rebirth, that's from the spread, in how I consciously wield emotional and intuitive energy. And that's Cups associated with the element of water. So this was a real live reading that I did today, and this is exactly how I would do some journaling in my own journal. So this is a great, this slide is, I think, really helpful to just see like how it works. And that's a spread, a really simple spread that I think helped me go really deep. Okay, so we're just about ready to get into the theory. I don't see anything in the chat. Okay, so we're going to talk about the minors. So I've mentioned elements. I've mentioned water and fire so far. We're going to talk about that and get that theory out of the way. So when you pull minor cards, this is the bottom 4 rows that you see here. When you pull these cards are pointing to the actual material circumstances of your day-to-day life, like what is actually happening today or, you know, these days, right? When you pull the major cards, and you don't always get a major card, right? And sometimes you get like a bunch of major cards. When you pull the major cards, those cards are pointing to the deeper, like evolutionary soul journey work that is happening. So right off the bat, you're breaking your understanding of the deck into these 2 categories. We have like the little stuff, and then we have like the big, you know, you might think the deep stuff, surface level and deep, and then they work together in each reading. So the minor cards, they are the ancestors of playing cards. So the wands later became clubs, the cups became hearts, the swords became spades, and the pentacles are diamonds. You can see these images here. And then on this slide, I have all the info that you need. So these 4 elements are the kind of traditional Western elements. They dovetail somewhat with Eastern cosmology, like Chinese medicine and yin and yang, right? And I've added yin and yang here. So there's the masculine, feminine element. But these are kind of the foundational elements to a lot of Western occultism. So if you've ever been interested in astrology or Wicca, paganism, witchcraft, any of that stuff, this is the same thing. So to me, that's very exciting because it means we actually, a lot of us have some footholds to hold on to, and we'll talk about astrology in a moment. So wands are associated with fire, that's a yang, masculine energy. Swords are air, that's also considered yang, masculine. Cups are water, and pentacles are earth, those are our yin, feminine elements. And then I have some keywords here. So I won't belabor reading this whole slide, but I will pause. I see some folks are taking notes. So we'll just pause here. And if you have questions about this slide, please do type them in the chat or speak up while we pause here. Yeah, we will be emailing this PowerPoint, so you'll have this forever. Okay, so do all tarot cards look the same? Great question. Absolutely not. There are literally hundreds of tarot decks out there. Many of them are like based off of these images. So these images published in 1910 that we're using tonight, most teachers out there, people like me who are imparting this information, almost all of them are going to be using this imagery. There is another kind of area of tarot that I am not as familiar with, which is known as Thoth or Thoth, which is named for an Egyptian god. It's the symbology is much denser and more Egyptian and very esoteric. So this imagery is known as the Rider-Waite. I'll type it in the chat. People call it the Rider-Waite pack, or I mentioned the artist was Pamela Coleman Smith, and there is, particularly in the last couple years, people are starting to call it more the Smith-Rider-Waite. Putting her name first because she is the artist, and sometimes people call it the, I think people call it the RSW, so Rider-Smith-Waite, any of those things. Many tarot decks are based very closely on this imagery. So there are really cool decks out there, and maybe I should add this to the resources. There's a number of decks that have been recently published that basically are very faithful to this imagery, but the people are not all white, and not all able-bodied, and not all gendered. And actually there are some kind of genderqueer looking cards in the original, but they're certainly all white. So there are some cool melanated tarot decks that are faithful to this imagery. And then let me tell you people, there are so many decks out there. I really recommend starting with either this deck or something that is kind of faithful to this, just because the material that you find out there in books and on the internet is based off of this imagery. So there's a really popular deck, for example, that I'll type in the chat that I love, that's called The Wild Unknown. It's incredibly beautiful art. I totally recommend that you buy it. It's not great for beginners because a lot of it is black and white. It's like pen and ink drawings. They're beautiful, and there's watercolor, rainbow colors, gorgeous, but the cards are like really hard to tell apart. And there are decks out there that are more in the Marseille tradition, where the minor cards don't have any images at all. They're very close to playing cards. So I recommend something that is more faithful to the original, not the original, but the Rider-Waite pack, just because it's so popular and it's everywhere. Okay, enough with that. We're gonna take a tiny detour. We're gonna do this twice tonight because I just think it's so, once I found this out, I was doing tarot for years before I really understood the depth of the connection to astrology. And I always want to bring it up because a lot of you are probably into astrology to some degree, so this is a good toehold for you. And then B, even if you're not into astrology, I'm here to tell you that you are into astrology and that you're expressing your chart all the time. And it's a lot more than just your sun sign, the date you were born, right? There's all sorts of stuff in your chart. But these energies that we're talking about, these elemental energies, we're like living and breathing them all the time. So right now I'm expressing a great deal of air energy because I'm here and I'm speaking, right? And I'm thinking and I'm kind of using my mind to do this right now. Later, when I do a demo, I might really draw more on water, which is like intuition, right? So we're expressing these things all the time, even if we don't know it. So if you don't know your sun sign, you probably do, but if you don't, just in case, here's a list. So using myself as an example, I'm a Gemini. I was born on May 24th. So I'm a Gemini, kind of closer to Taurus. And that means that I am an air sign. So I'm expressing air right now. And I also kind of, my Gemini ego is comfortable expressing air. So you may know that already. And again, these are the same elements that go with the tarot. So air is swords. But you might not know on the very left here, your energetic modality in which you express that elemental energy. So that part is not so much connected to tarot, but I want to weave it in because, again, I think this can be really useful for you to, after you leave here tonight, to start actually thinking about how you experience these elemental energies in your day-to-day life. Because again, tarot is just a thermometer on those things. So for me, I'm an air sign and I'm the only mutable air sign. So mutable means changeable, it's reactive, it's like moving with the surroundings. The fixed signs are the ones who express their element in a fixed way, like radiating out from a center or drawing in towards the center. And then the cardinal signs are the ones who express their element moving in a definite direction, like moving forward, beginning something. So this is, again, it's kind of tangentially related to tarot, but I think it's really helpful to make you feel more fluent as you move along. And hopefully some of you are having some light bulbs go off like, oh, I know this stuff. I think, oh yeah, one more slide and then we'll take some questions. Okay, so we just talked about the suits, right? So now we have the numbers. So you put these two things together and now you're gonna have tarot theory and you can grab a deck of playing cards and read tarot for people. That's a great party trick. If you don't have your deck with you, to some extent, minor cards only, right? You only have the Fool as a major card, but you can do it. So you have the theory now. So all of the numbers represent similar ideas and then you kind of insert them into the element, right? So I've pulled across the 4 suits, I've pulled my favorite cards that I think illustrate their number really well. So you'll see all 4 suits represented and then here are the numbers. And again, you'll receive this PowerPoint, so you'll have this. Just to highlight a few things, like aces, there was one in my example spread. Aces are about the pure potential of that energy, that it's like it's present in your field and spirit is inviting you to reach up and grab that energy and actually wield it to enact your will in the world, to make magic. So in the spread I did for myself today, I received the Ace of Cups. So there's a suggestion there that the kind of most fertile place for me right now is in how I use my water energy. So emotions, intuition, kind of like a feminine, like receptivity kind of. So that's aces. Tens I want to highlight. The 10 of Swords is a famous card, a very spooky looking card. Tens really, they represent the end of the cycle and therefore the beginning of a new cycle. So anytime you see a scary looking image in the tarot, an image of death or destruction of some kind, what is really being said is that there's some like version of you that is ready to die so that a more evolved and more authentic and more spiritually aligned version of you can be born. So even when you pull the death card, it doesn't mean you're going to go get hit by a bus or something. It means that you're ready to transform. And the last thing I'll say before questions is that bottom row are the court cards. This is really useful information that I did not know for years and years. And that is that the court cards are all double elemented. So they have the element of their suit that you see in the picture. And then the pages all have earth. The knights have fire, the queens have water, and the kings have air. So I've pulled from the deck in this picture, I've pulled the double. So page of pentacles is earth of earth. Knight of wands is fire of fire. Queen of cups, water of water, and king of swords, air of air. So the last thing I want to say about that is and you'll hear people like Lindsay Mack say this as well in the kind of tarot space today, there is a big revision happening in the culture around court cards. Many traditional decks and booklets that come with decks, and then books, long form books that you buy, will talk about court cards as if they always represent another person. Another person. So kings are men who are older than you, queens are women who are older than you, knights are young men, and pages are like boys or girls or women, or it's like very weird. It's very gendered. There's even old school stuff where like cups mean that they're blonde, and like swords mean that they have dark eyes. It's like really, you can hear the sarcasm in my voice because to me, it's very old school. My take on it, and a lot of people agree, is that tarot, all the cards are you. They're all about you. Yes, they might point to things that are happening in your relationships, but guess what? All of your relationships are you too. They're just projections of you. We're all just, it's one big projection party. We're all one. All of us on this group tonight, anyone watching this YouTube video, I don't care if it's 10 years from now, I am you and you are me. So I really want to say, you know, take what you find in books with a grain of salt. My feeling about court cards is that they're really great. They're like prescriptions for how you should embody elemental energy. So if I pull the Queen of Cups, for example, water of water, it's like an invitation to use my water energy to work on water problems. So if I'm having a conflict in my romantic relationship, I'm feeling very heart heavy, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling really bogged down by tough emotions, that's water. The remedy suggested by the Queen of Cups is to go to my tarot deck. Maybe take a bubble bath first, right? Take a salt bath, do some self-care, get into my intuitive space, go to my tarot deck and really dive deep, right? It's like a prescription. So that is kind of my own take on court cards, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more and more of that be coming out in books to come, because again, it's ready for an upgrade. So that's hopefully something useful for you to hold on to. That's what I have for minors. So before we move into majors, let's take a pause if you have any questions. And go ahead and unmute yourself, don't be shy. Okay, I see a request here to just go back to the sun signs real quick. Oop, going the wrong way. We'll leave that up for a moment. Let's see if we have any other questions coming through. Okay, we're right on time. Ooh. All right, so that's what I have for minors. So we're gonna move on to the major cards. So here they are. They have the unfortunate name of also being called trumps. And the minor cards, by the way, are called pips. Pips and court cards and trumps. So the trumps, what are they? As I said earlier, when you pull these cards, and you won't always pull one, but oftentimes you pull at least one. These cards they carry more of an energetic charge, you might say, than the minor cards. So again, the minor cards have their expressions of the 4 elemental energies that are the building blocks of all of the universe. But the trumps are kind of like, they're much more esoteric than that. You might think of them as energy that is kind of like above the world in an etheric way, or you might think of it as energy that's beneath, that's deep, that's like unconscious, right? Subconscious, going back to that, to the Jungian idea, right? And they're archetypes. So it's not that there's no archetypal energy in the minor cards. There certainly is, but you can see like again, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of these images that you see here, people all over the world have some version of this. These are like really, really ancient, they're like our psychic DNA, basically, is what archetypes are. And I have a definition on the next page. So if you look down at the like fourth line there for psychoanalysis. So in Jungian psychology, an archetype is a primitive mental image inherited from the earliest human ancestors and supposed to be present in the collective unconscious. So this phrase, collective unconscious, was coined by Jung. And again, it's the idea that people all over the world, even people in like uncontacted cultures deep in the Amazon or in Siberia, right? They have these things. So the magician, cultures all over the world have shamans, right? They have priests and priestesses. They have oracles, that's the Hierophant. They have, let's see, the Hermit is a great example. Justice, justice system, or like tools for wielding justice. Death, of course, people everywhere have death, and so on. So again, when you pull these cards, it's like, it's not so much about what's happened, the circumstances of your day-to-day life. It's more about like where your soul is, where you are in the journey from beginning to end. And we'll speak a little bit more about that as well. The other idea that I decided to weave in, because I think it's so helpful, is this idea of synchronicity. So this was a term coined by Jung, and it means the simultaneous occurrence of events which appear significantly related, but have no discernible causal connection. So this is like what happens when you're talking to your husband about your best friend and you're saying, I haven't talked to her in months, I'm really worried about her. And then she calls you that moment, right? That's a classic example of synchronicity. Or a couple, I'm coming to you now from this office space that I'm renting that I decided to rent because I had so many synchronicities around Peter Pan and like, what are the other, I can't even think, you know, other archetypes that are like, I just kept seeing Peter Pan, and there was like a poster for a Peter Pan production in this office building. And it was like the fourth Peter Pan I had seen in as many days. And I was like, oh, I'll take this office space. This is it, right? So what Jung said was that synchronicity, it occurs in the presence of an activated archetype. So when archetypal energy is present in your psychic field, you're going to experience more synchronicity. So, okay, why is she going on this tangent? I decided to go on this tangent because in my experience, the more you work with your tarot deck, the more you're going to start to feel that kind of electric energy of synchronicity, and the more kind of organic and like deep soul level your connection to the majors is going to become. So the majors are coming up like in a reading because they are, they have really deep soul level messages for us about how we're being called to evolve. And so they don't have to do so much with the circumstances of your life. They have to do with like what the universe is trying to tell you in these weird, uncanny moments, you know, like when you have synchronicity. So if you don't know what I'm talking about and you're like, this girl sounds crazy, I'm not crazy, but this is kind of an esoteric concept, but I really wanted to weave it in because I think that it is so foundational to your relationship with the majors. So I'm happy to, if you have a question about this, maybe put it in the chat now, and I'm happy to loop back to this later because it's a bit of a tangent, but my intuition told me like, put this in because this is what the majors are really about. They're about these kind of moments when the universe is like speaking to us and we're just compelled to listen because we know, you know, we're about to evolve, we're about to level up. So what that looks like, one way to kind of conceive of that, right? The concept here is what's known as the Fool's Journey. So these cards come in order and they form a story. it's not that when you go to your tarot deck, you're going to pull these cards in order. It's very holographic in the sense that each one is reflecting the other one in all these loop-de-loo connections. And there's nothing linear about it, but we can kind of understand this idea of soul evolution using a linear trope known as the Fool's Journey. So the Fool's at the top. He goes through this first line, and we could call it life. So all of the cards in the first line are really their keys, their spiritual principles that have to do with ego development. So you're kind of becoming conscious of your power as the creator of your destiny, right? And kind of wielding that and finding out like what you can do in the world. In the second line, we start to move into death, and it's really, again, the death of the lower self, so that a higher expression can be born, a higher state of consciousness of spiritual evolution, right? And so the last line is about rebirth. And so you can kind of see in the images that that first line, all of them have figures of people in this traditional imagery. And then that continues until card 10, which is the Wheel of Fortune. And you can see there's a lot of esoteric symbology on that card in these Rider-Waite images. And then things start to get a little bit more kind of psychedelic, you might say. There's kind of weird, there's weird stuff happening. You're about to meet the Grim Reaper. And then if you look at that third line, the imagery is really kind of not realistic at all. You have check out the moon, which is in the middle of the bottom line. You can kind of see a lot of the energy of the third line is what is the kind of archetypal energy that we feel when we are having like an experience of opening and seeing our place in the universe in a more expanded view. And that's very much what the very last card, the World, is about. And when you are in a world phase, it has the same vibe as like a 10, where it's an end and a beginning. Like you have reached a new level of like seeing yourself more clearly, right? You're like coming around to meet yourself in a way that you haven't yet. And now you're ready to kind of start a really new phase and become the Fool again. So that's the end of the line, but kind of all of line 3 has that element of like seeing things with an expanded view, seeing your place in the universe instead of just operating only out of the ego as you used to do in line 1, right? So again, life is not linear, but we can understand this, this tool in this linear way, and we call it the Fool's Journey. Okay, I think there's some chat action. Oh, cool. Oh, yeah, a connection to Chiron in astrology, our karmic wound, how we evolve and transform using the lessons we learned in past lives. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so, one thing that I got from Lindsay Mack, who I've mentioned a few times, is she always talks about the cards as medicine. She always talks about the medicine of each card, right? And so they're really, even those scary looking cards, this tool is here. It's for healing. It's for us to become more whole. Healed has the same etymological root as whole, if I remember correctly. So we're trying to become healed. We're trying to become more whole. And that is very much what the World card encapsulates as kind of a goal of this esoteric journey. And then there's a book recommendation here from Tiffany. I have a copy of that book, actually, Second Sight by Judith Orloff. But like all my books, I haven't even started it. That's a Gemini problem. I have a lot of books that I can't seem to get to, but I just keep buying them. Okay, let me go to the next slide, and then maybe we'll take some questions if there are any. So this is a chart that I made, and it's kind of an amalgamation of 3 of my favorite books that I've listed at the top, and I'll also link for you later. So these are really not my words. This is kind of a hodgepodge. So, you know, I want to give credit to these 3 tarotists listed at the top. But what I've done is taken keywords for each of the major cards. And so in each box there, you'll see that there's a key principle. And then beneath that in italic font, I have two more ideas. I have the idea of excess and I have the idea of blockage. So this is very much in keeping with the Jungian. It dovetails so well with Jungian archetypal work because he talks a lot about the shadow, right? So these are, each card represents archetypal energy that if you get the card, it means it's present for you, but that energy may or may not be in shadow for you. So the shadow is anything that we repress, anything that's unconscious, anything that we reject, anything that we feel shame about. Shame is a big one, right? Anything that is underexpressed or being overexpressed in an unhealthy way. So taking an example, let's look at the Hermit. So that is number 9. That's an archetype we're all familiar with. It's the Led Zeppelin cover. It is inner reflection. Great, that makes sense. We get that about hermits. If you pull the Hermit, there is a possibility that you are presently expressing Hermit energy, but you're expressing too much of it. So you're overanalyzing. Or you might be expressing too little of it and you might be avoiding the serious introspection that you really need to do in order to evolve, right? And so when you pull these cards, and it might be reversed. So again, you know, reversals they can be intimidating, but this page in particular may help you kind of crack the code with some reversals for the majors. What I want to say about this is that going back to the idea that the tarot is not going to show you anything that you don't know. You know where you're at. I remember I pulled the Hermit in recent months and I literally didn't know, or I thought I didn't know if I was over or under expressing it. I felt like in some ways I was doing a lot of like shadow work and inner work. I felt like I was really introspecting a lot. But on the other hand, I was like partying all the time, like going out with my friends, like way too much. This was before COVID. And so I pulled the Hermit and I really wasn't sure what his message was for me. Was I over or under? And one tool that I have, which I will demonstrate for you later, is a pendulum. This is something you can get at any esoteric shop. And what it's good for is answering yes or no questions. And I'll demonstrate it later. So I just used my pendulum to ask, like, do I need more Hermit? You know, and the answer was yes. Okay, well, do I need less Hermit? And the answer was no. I was like, okay, you know, and I kind of cracked the code. So I'll demonstrate that later. I think, yeah, this is, let me check the chat here. Nobody seems to have any questions. Must mean I'm doing a good job. We're gonna take a detour for astrology really quick. And again, I'm not adding this in to confuse you. I apologize if that's the effect. I really wanted to add this in to be a toehold for some folks who are already interested in astrology or feel like you're somewhat fluent in that. So we already talked about the elements. When it comes to the major cards, every single major card is associated with an astrological principle, either a sign or a planet. So on this page, I just have the signs. I didn't want to get too confusing, but the cards that aren't labeled are planets. So for example, the Empress is Venus, right? But I've labeled the signs. So you have your sun sign. So again, I'm a Gemini. So that means that I have my sun in the Lovers. My moon is Capricorn. So I have a moon in Devil. And my rising sign is Cancer. So I have my ascendant sign is the Chariot. So that's kind of a fun way to kind of learn the cards. And basically the way I think of this is that the archetypal energy, the kind of charge, the like electric charge to these cards is similar but not identical to the charge for each sign. So I have some slides on the next page that speak into that a little bit more. They're kind of like tarot horoscopes, basically. I see Death in the chat. So yeah, all you folks with Scorpio Sun or Scorpio placements, you have the Death card, which I think is totally badass. And I have the Devil too, so we're like, that's cool. So on this page, here you go. This is from tarot.com, a website you may have been on. And I'll give you a moment. This is the first half. We can look at the other half. So find your sun sign, or maybe the sun sign of someone you love. And you can just see how on tarot.com, they've kind of shown you how these things dovetail. And so I actually think that my card here, Gemini, is really interesting because I think what they've written here is really beautiful, and it's not exactly what you would think, you know? So the Lovers card, a lot of times if I'm doing a reading for someone, they might be really excited when I pull the Lovers card because they're like, I'm gonna meet someone, and you might, but the actual like energy of the Lovers card is really a lot more about choice than it is about love. And why that is, that has its history in like older imagery from older tarot decks, and it is this weird thing where like humanity is co-creating the meanings of the cards that evolve over time. And so it's like there's an image of lovers, but it's really, it's deeper than that. And this is the Lindsay Mack thing, like it's never going to be about, when you pull a major card, this is never about the person in the coffee shop that you're about to meet. This is never about your job right now. These cards they're really deep. They're about really, really deep spiritual principles, right? They're not just about the circumstances. And so I just love what they wrote here for Gemini, because it's such a lovely view of the Lovers card, which I think totally gets like diminished in how people in the day-to-day, what they think it represents. And then here's the second half of the zodiac here. You can take a minute to find what you're interested in. So the last thing I'll say about, one reason why I've included the zodiac dimension to this is that I really want to leave you with this idea for the evening, like leave you with the idea that the tarot is a tool that you can wield in whatever way you are called to wield it. So I really want to dispel this myth that the tarot is like this esoteric thing that only trained practitioners understand and only psychics can use it, and it's about telling the future, and it's like that the cards have the answers and you have nothing. You come to the cards as a blank slate looking for answers, and it's just such a myth. That's really not what it is. The cards are actually really good for working with in conscious ways. So knowing your zodiac placements, like I mentioned, my sun, moon, and rising, or like the season that we're in. So this is Virgo season, which means that it's Hermit season, right? And we just got out of Strength season and we're headed towards Justice season. So a lot of people, I have an image, a few slides. So a lot of tarot enthusiasts keep an altar. And this is kind of a witchcrafty idea as well. So if you have space in your spot to do this, I really recommend this if you're dedicated to learning tarot. This is a picture of my altar at home. So I have many tarot decks, and what I do is I do all of my readings using this traditional deck. And then when I've done a reading that is very powerful for whatever reason, every month around the new moon, I create a new altar. So we've just had a full moon. So I'll be dismantling my altar soon and getting ready to start a new one at the new moon. And I go through my different decks that I like, and I pull the versions of the cards that I am choosing to work with. So, and sometimes that has to do with the zodiac season that we're in. But a lot of times it's from a reading that I've done for myself, or a series of readings. So this is an image from a few months ago, and you can see I actually have like maybe 20 cards out, but not to overwhelm. So I took a picture here. I was working with the Hanged Man and the Two of Pentacles. So those cards had a lot, they were packed with kind of like a density of meaning for me based on various spreads that I had done. And at that time, and I honestly don't really even remember what was happening at that time, but something was going on where in my mind, in my heart, the Two of Pentacles and the Hanged Man were related. Like they were energies that were married in my life at that moment. Right? It doesn't have to be forever, but at that moment, I wanted to work with them together. And you could see here, I actually had the Hanged Man flipped upside down. So I've always thought, and you probably noticed too, that the Hanged Man reversed has a totally different look than the Hanged Man upright. In one, he's hanging upside down, and in the other, it looks like he's doing a jig. So that's something that I love. That you're not gonna find that in like a book telling you what the meaning is, but that's just something that really spoke to me at that time. And that became a focal point of my altar. And this is a place where I do meditate. And there's something that a lot of people like to do that sometimes people call it pathwork. I'll type that in the chat. You can Google that. And it's kind of like, basically it's like visualization meditation, where you're kind of like meditating on a card and imagining yourself journeying into the card and speaking with the figure that's there, or speaking with the energy that's there. And so I bring this up just to really underscore this idea that like you can consciously work with these cards. And in fact, I really encourage you to, because the results that you're going to get are going to be much like deeper and more profound than if you're always assuming that more passive position that's like, just tell me what to do. It's okay to go to your deck and say like, tell me what to do. We all do that, but this kind of a practice, I think, is just, it's so rich, and I really just can't recommend it enough. So in addition to that, I've listed there journal and altar at the bottom, the traditional tools, and I'll show you my tools. So the traditional tools are a candle, and this is, first I'll go in order. First, a cloth. So traditionally they say that you should wrap your tarot cards in purple or dark blue or gold. And these are considered high vibrational colors. So if you think about the chakra system, as you move up, right, you're going from like the reds up through the rainbow up to the blues and purples. So that's traditional. That's not a rule, but that's traditional. A candle is thought to invite spirit into the space. So sacred energy into the space. I like to use a bell. This basically achieves the same end as like smudging. So there's a lot of stuff out there talking about how sage has been over harvested, and it's a traditional Native American herb. And so instead of burning sage, if you'd like to get away from that, you can use bell. Probably a lot of, if you're of European descent, probably a lot of your ancestors used this to clear the space. So this is like, the candle says welcome energies, and the bell says, if you're not helpful, please leave. Crystal ball is fun, but not required. I have a really little one. It's quartz. So you can use this for divination. It's called scrying. If you look into a crystal ball, you can do it in a mirror or in a bowl of water. It's called scrying, so you could do that. I like to have a quartz because it's a clearing crystal. So I consider it a part of my practice to open my intuitive channel. And I have my necklace I always wear that also has quartz on the end and a number of other stones. If you're into crystals, you know, then anything goes. There's many hundreds of crystals, but quartz is a good one for clearing. And then I already spoke about the pendulum. So I'll demonstrate how it works. If you buy a pendulum or make one out of like a washer and a string, you need to get to know your pendulum. So you need to ask it to show you what yes and no look like. So I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to talk to you for a second. I swear I'm not going to move my hand in any way. I'm going to show you how this works, and I don't really know how it works. It's kind of really spooky. My feeling about it is that, well, my feeling is that there are spirits among us all the time. Okay, let's just make that clear. But I also think that part of what the pendulum does is that it cuts through the ego mind and helps you just access the intuitive knowing that you have without getting stuck up here in the chatter. So I'm not going to move my hand at all. You don't do it consciously, but there's maybe some kind of unconscious, like pre-conscious impulse that's moving the hand, like, you know, invisibly. I don't know. But you need to get to know your pendulum. So a lot of people have the same setup that I do, but you might find something different. But a lot of folks have this. So I say to my pendulum, I say, show me yes. Show me yes. Or I say, is the sky blue? Is the sky blue? And you can see that it's starting to move back and forth. And if I say, show me no, is the sky green? Is the sky green? It starts to move in a circle. So a lot of folks, not everyone has that relationship with their pendulum. It's easy for me because it's like this way is like a head nodding and this way is like a head shaking. That's how I think of it. But you may also have the experience that can be very frustrating where your pendulum tells you not sure. So for me, and again, it could be different for you, but for me, if my pendulum goes dead still, it means not sure, or it means stop fishing for the answers, Kate. This is not yours to know right now, or whatever. And it's really remarkable. It really works. Like I'll, you know, and you're asking a series of yes or no questions in your mind or quietly, and I'll be doing that, and it's like swinging, 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 and then it just stops in a way that seems physically, you know, very unlikely. And I know that I've maybe come to the end of my questioning. So these are my tools. We have enough time, we have plenty of time to do a demo or even two, which I'm really excited. I've done a good job, you guys, like paring it down. So let's really, I'm gonna stop the share, and let's really, please don't be shy if you do have questions. I'd love to hear. There's a few in the chat, so I'll get started. If you have more questions, please type them. So which decks are you using here? What are some of your favorites? Okay, great question. So the image that I showed you, I had the Wild Unknown. I'm going to type them. I had the Dreaming Way. And then the Ostara Tarot is one that I love. And then I sometimes use the Aquarian Tarot, which is more of a classic like 1970s vibe, which was another heyday for tarot from what I hear. I wasn't there. So those are my like big four that I use. I actually am not one of these people that has like 30 decks. I probably have about 7. I try to really hold myself back, but I have friends that have literally like 30 or 40 decks. So those are the ones that were in my image. I did not make my own pendulum. I purchased this one, but I have seen other folks just make them out of like found objects, which is really cool. And the other thing about that is that your body is a pendulum. Your body is a pendulum. Your gut is a pendulum, right? And so really you don't need the tool, but it can help cut through. I know for me, when I use my body as a pendulum, a lot of times I feel a yes in my heart chakra, and I feel a no somewhere lower, like in my gut somewhere, or in like my sacrum, like there's a tensing. So that's just a totally like idiosyncratic thing. It may be different for you, but you are all in possession of a pendulum right now. Okay, do I do readings for others? Yes, I do. So if you're on Instagram, that's the best place to find me, but I'm also on Facebook, and actually maybe just so I don't forget, I'll paste all my stuff again. I have a number of spreads that I've designed, and I'm always I think I'm going to come up with another one. Mars is going into retrograde tomorrow. So if you're feeling really fiery and frustrated, I'm going to have a tarot spread on tap for you soon, because I'm feeling that. Recommendations for books. Laura's going to help me send some recommendations for you after this. So I won't type them in the chat, but they're coming to you. Do I practice Reiki? No, I don't, but I really want to. So I really think I actually have a book on like healing touch, which I think is maybe where I'm headed. So Melissa, if you are a practitioner or whatever, if you want to reach out, shoot me an email. Yeah, cool. Linda, second level. Yeah, I think that's the direction I'm headed in, because it's all energy. It's all energy. And tarot has really been my way into that. But for those of you who are in the healing arts, it's all connected. And I really do think of tarot as a healing art. I really do, as we talked about earlier. So that's cool. Yeah, nice. Yeah, cool. Okay, any questions about anything we've covered before we do a demo?
Yeah, Kate, actually, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
It's Ian. So when you're discussing the elements of, I guess, like the face cards, like the page, knight, queen, and you were talking about, I guess, giving your example of the Queen of Cups being like using water to solve your water problems. So you're talking about, because you chose like the identities, so like the Queen of Cups there, it got kind of confusing. So you're talking about, I guess, the element of the card being used to solve the problems of the element of the suit. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so let me, is it too much work to go back to that slide? I think I'll do it. It takes a few clicks. I don't know why. It makes me like connect to Google Drive all over again, but let's do it. It's worth it. Because I think court cards are perhaps the most confusing part of tarot, because in part just because they like all look similar. So you pull them in a reading, like I've gotten, and it still happens to me after 10 years, like I'll do a reading and it'll be like majority court cards, and I'll just be like, oh, really? Like, oh, this is so hard, you know, because they're just imagistically, I don't know if that's a word, but they're just too similar. Okay, here's the slide. Yeah, so this idea of double elementation, and you will find in books that there's room for play here, because some authors and tarotists actually have the knights and the kings switched, I believe, and will say that knights are air and kings are fire. But I am very strongly not in that camp. I feel very strongly that the basic like energy of knights is the same energy as fire, which is pure yang energy. It's pure yang masculine energy, like moving out and getting stuff done. That's the knights. They're going on a quest, right? And then kings are air. That's more rarefied. That's more kind of like intellectual mastery. So I'll speak into this a little bit more. This is kind of a tangent, and Ian can tell me if I answered the question. I'll speak into it a little bit more because it's interesting and it's helpful. So pages are earth. All of them, regardless of what suit they're in, they're expressing to some extent earth energy, because they are the ones that want to learn about their element. So what you can think about all tarot, all of the minor cards, all the numbers, is that these energies are present and you can use them. You are expressing them. It's kind of like you express them or they express you, right? Like it's happening. So you may as well be conscious about it, right? So with the pages, they're earth because they're curious. They want to learn. They're like, okay, I know I need to work on my emotions. You know, I'm drowning in my emotions. That's water, Page of Cups. Like, I know I need to do this. I'm ready. you know, I'm ready, God, like, show me what to do. And that's kind of why they're earth, because they're wanting to get their hands dirty. The knights are fire because they have developed in their element enough to kind of wield it towards an end. They're like, okay, now I have a quest. I really want to take what I know about earth, take what I know about water, fire, air, and I want to move forward into the world and like prove myself. The queens are water because they're the ones who want to like relax into the self, into the intuitive body, and to like feel the element and embody it in this very yin kind of way. And then the kings are air because, again, they're more rarefied, intellectualized. They're like masters of their element. So this, again, this is very, very different than what you'll read in these traditional books that will tell you that the court cards represent other people coming into your life. This kind of a framework that I'm sharing tonight is really about like how you express the four elements. So that's kind of, so the example of Queen of Cups, water of water, is like, can you express your water energy in watery ways? Can you say like, and I'll do another example as well. So like Queen of Cups is like, I have a lot on my heart. I'm feeling a lot of emotion. My heart is heavy. That's my water energy. And I'm going to go to my intuitive tools like tarot or taking a long bath, and I'm going to use those tools to work on the water material that's present. Whereas, let's see, the Knight of Cups might be someone, it might be like the prescription, the medicine that he's bringing is like, you're feeling this emotional material, that's the cups, that's water, and you need to do something about it. Like you need to share that with the world and express it, move outward, like take a chance, right? Like offer your heart to someone, maybe, is a big Knight of Cups thing. So those are two examples. Does that answer your question, Ian?
Yeah, no, I mean, all of it sort of.
Yeah. Okay.
A bit more, sure. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah, the court cards, I feel that they're very difficult. So if that's still feeling fuzzy to anyone, I think that's pretty typical. Somebody had a question, how often do you read? So I know a lot of folks that read religiously every morning and just pull one card. That's not something that is in my practice per se, but if you're really interested in learning and just kind of getting familiar with the cards, this is a great practice to weave into your day. It's not a spread. It's just like, what's the card for the day? Like, what's the theme for the day? And you have one. And then maybe if you have time in the evening to do some journaling and to really ask yourself, well, how did I see that come up today? By the end of, a couple months, you'll have a really in-depth relationship, probably with a number of cards. Because the crazy thing is, you're going to get like the same one a bunch. You're not going to get a different one every day, I assure you. So you'll really start to have a relationship with a handful of cards that way. So that's a really great practice. Any other questions before we do a demo? Okay, so this is something new. I haven't done this before. I want to have a volunteer from the audience. I think this is going to be really fun. So, oh, Linda, I see Linda. She's going to do it. Before we do it, Linda, I do see one more question from Stephanie. So let's grab that and then we'll do a demo here. So how do you keep your energy out of the cards when reading? This is
like, yeah, for somebody else, right? Because sometimes I found like cards would come out and I was like, ooh, I'm sorry, that was mine. Like, so how do you kind of keep that space?
Yeah. It's such a great question. Yeah. So, for you personally, Stephanie, it's clear that you actually are in tune with that. So what Stephanie's describing, if you didn't catch it, is like she's reading for another person. But as she starts to pull cards, her intuition is telling her that some of them are meant for her and not meant for the other person. And this is very common. I did this pop-up at, if you're local, it was at Yarrow in Kittery, which is a wonderful shop where I've done some of these workshops. And I did a bunch of readings, and in every single one, the Hierophant came up. And I tried to weave it in to people's readings. And then later I was like, oh my God, that's me. You know, because that card is like the oracle. It's like the person who translates spiritual information for their community. It's like the oracle at Delphi. I was like, oh, that's just me. You know, so that does happen. And so the answer is to get really practiced, right? At knowing your own intuitive channel and knowing like how information comes to you and how you can like verify what it is. And it sounds like Stephanie can already do it. And this is a process that's for all of us is an evolution, right? But one way to kind of avoid that, because it does happen frequently. I think one way to avoid that is to have very clear and precise rituals around how you set up space, how you close out space, and so forth. And this is just good, like spiritual hygiene for always, because if for no other reason, it's important, I think, to have rituals, because this is how you will open your intuitive channel. So if you come to your cards and it's very scattered all the time and you don't have any sort of ritual, and I'm about to show you mine, you're making it harder for yourself to kind of get into that oracular space, right? Where you become an open channel for information. And this topic is kind of heading more into the kind of like woo-woo, you know, psychic thing. And that's not necessary. You don't have to kind of even believe in that, I think, to get something out of tarot, but there is that dimension to it. So having a ritual is good. So if we have time, we'll do 2 demos for Linda and Melissa. So Linda, if you're willing to come speak or maybe type something, if you're willing, and you don't have to, but you know, is there anything that's on your heart that you would ask the cards tonight? You can be as vague, or you can just say, you tell me, and we can do it that way too.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Future, as far as, you know, I'm at a crossroads right now, and so kind of unsure of what I want to do or where I want to go. So just to know about, am I going in the right direction?
Okay, so at a crossroads, am I going in the right direction? Okay, so what I'll do is we're going to pull 3 cards. So I'm just going to invent a spread right now. So it's we'll call it the crossroads spread. Crossroads spread. So we'll say that card 1. Well, Linda, let me ask you, do you feel like you have a choice in front of you that you're trying to decide? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So we'll go real simple. It's going to be like card 1 is choice A, card 2 is choice B, and card 3 I'm going to put in the middle, and it's going to be how to move forward. And what I'm looking for, and I'm just getting it clear in my mind, that's all that really matters. It could be helpful to write it down, but what I'm thinking about choice A and choice B, you already know, Linda, what the choices are. I don't know. But what we're really looking for with the cards is like, what's Linda gonna feel? You know, what's in store for Linda's soul journey? It's not really about whatever the circumstances are per se. It's more about what is possible, you know, for Linda's heart and soul, if that makes sense. So I am not the type of tarot reader that's going to be like, oh, oh, it's about a job, and there are tarot, that is psychic information that is very real. I don't mean to diminish that type of tarot work where someone is really kind of receiving psychic information about your life, but I think you'll see that that's not necessarily my style. So, okay, we'll do a demo to the best of my ability here. So I have my candle, right? This is, again, to invite, to create sacred space. This is a really important part of my ritual. And then I'm dismissing energy that doesn't have my best interest and Linda's best interest at heart. And then here's my ritual, and you'll make up your own. This is the Kate Sheridan original. This is not the rule. But I like to, I like to go like this. This is kind of the typical way that folks shuffle. And by the way, sometimes when you do this, a card will jump out. Many tarot readers use that card as the first placement. Some tarot readers actually, they just keep doing this until enough cards jump out. And this is actually how they choose cards, in just this way. So that's not my style. My style is I call on my guides, and then I like to cut the deck and do like a real shuffle. Some folks will tell you not to, but I think you can do anything you want. So then I go a real shuffle on my thigh, and I go, show me what's in Linda's highest and best. And I do this 3 times. So I call on my guides to show me what's in Linda's highest and best. I call on my guides to show me what's in Linda's highest and best. So from here, I'll set it down. Very few tarot readers will pick directly from the top of the deck at this moment. Some do, and it's fine if you want to. Some readers from here will spread the cards out in a fan, and they'll choose by hovering their hand. So, imagine that I took the time to really spread them out. So typically, it's thought that you should choose with your non-dominant hand, the left hand for most of us, and that is part of going back to the question about energy. Using your non-dominant hand is one way to kind of cut through your conscious energy that you have in your dominant hand. So you're trying to access like psychic or spiritual energy that's present in the room that isn't your ego projection. So that's why we use the non-dominant hand. So I like to hold my crystal in my right hand and do my picking with my left hand. So if this is your style, you might hover your hand until you feel some kind of intuitive hit. You might feel like warmth. You might just, when I do it this way, I just feel like I got like locked. Like I feel like I'm moving, and then ever so slightly, like I just am compelled to stop. And then that's when I, lower and find the card that's calling to me. So that's a typical method. And by the way, as a side note, when you're reading for someone else, different readers do different things. Some readers have the other person do shuffling and even do the picking and have the querent, the question asker, do activity. And then some readers, including me, I've really moved away from that. I find that it cuts some of the noise for me if I just kind of do it myself, or maybe have the querent shuffle once and then I kind of, go from there. And it's an intuitive thing for me when I'm with other people. So when you're with another person, this gets a little bit more complicated. But reading for myself, or reading tonight for Linda, from here, my style is the knock method. So this is another kind of classic method. So I take my non-dominant hand, I have my crystal, and then I'll get back into the space here. This is the crossroads for Linda. and then I'll knock and cut. And it's interesting, I only had 2 cards there. Sometimes I'll have, you know, half the deck. I like to stick those on the bottom, and then I go from here. So choice A, choice B, and how to move forward. Okay, so I'll hold them. I'll speak to you like this and I'll hold them up. It just occurred to me that I should have had Linda choose in her mind, don't tell me, but which one is A and which one is B. So if you haven't done that, Linda, since there's no time and past, present, and future are all here, you can choose now and it will still count. So in your mind, Linda, you have A and you have B. And for A, we've got the King of Pentacles. So choice A, behind that door, is an expression of air, of earth. So going back to our elements, this has to do with using your air faculties to deal with earth questions. So earth questions are questions of work, finances, your material possessions, your home, also your body and your self-care, right? Everything that's like real, it's the material in your world. So choice A has that flavor for you of a feeling of mastery and intellectual kind of confidence around those matters. Choice B is also another pentacle card. Okay, so it's the 8 of Pentacles. And the key word that we looked at on our earlier slide for 8 is about ebb and flow. So you can see this image is an artisan at his workbench, you know, working on these pentacles, which again represent material concerns. So choice B for you is a little bit more of work. So there's kind of, it sounds like choice A is something that maybe is safer, that feels like there's more, like you're more of a master of that choice. It's maybe, it might be like what you're doing now, like no change. And then it sounds like choice B is something that there's more work for you, like to get it started, to get it off the ground. Maybe it's a new endeavor or something like that. In the middle, we have how to move forward, and we have the 10 of Wands. So the bird's eye view of this spread, we don't have any majors, right? And we have 2 pentacles and 1 wand. So we have 2 earth and 1 fire. So what we're really talking about are in those realms. So again, earth being material resources, work, finances, the body, and fire being creativity, passion, even sexuality, just kind of like fuego, right? It's that pure yang energy. So that is the place where the answer to your question lies. So the question, the choices are very clearly about material circumstances, but you will not find the answer to the question in your expression of earth energy. You're going to find it in your expression of your fire energy. So the 10 means that this crossroads that you've described is the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new cycle in how you express your creativity and passion. So asking yourself like what you want out of this new cycle and what your heart is really asking for as you like express your passion, that's where the answer is. And I'm not the type of tarot reader that will tell you one or the other, because actually I think both of these look really kind of pretty good. Right? So the question about which one to choose is like, what is your fire energy asking of you? How does fire want to move through you? And which one feels in alignment with that? The mastery or the work? So that's a really quick reading. Does that resonate with you, Linda?
It does, because I just wrote an article that I'm getting ready to have published in a journal, and had it reviewed by somebody that I totally respect. And then last night, in about 20 minutes, I wrote 2.5 pages of something else, totally different. And I'm not a writer by any shape of the imagination. And so I'm just wondering, where is all this creativity and this, desire to write coming from?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it sounds like, based on these cards, like it sounds like this is this kind of like new craft that you've discovered. And you have, it sounds like you have some sort of choice about how this is meant to express through you. And again, coming into conversation like with your creative energy, it could very well be that you just have creative energy, right? And it's not about like becoming a writer or quitting your job and becoming a writer. It's really more about like, oh my gosh, wow, I'm more creative than I thought I was. What should I do next? You know, and that's kind of that energy of 10 is kind of, it's an open book. It's a new cycle that's beginning now.
Well, thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a question here. What if you're ambidextrous? It's a great question. I don't know the answer. I think maybe go with the left hand, because in addition to being most folks' non-dominant hand, the left is also like associated with the unconscious. It's associated with the feminine. It's associated with darkness, with, you know, yin. So I would say go with the left, but that's my 2 cents. We still have some time, and if folks want to like drop out here and say goodnight, I won't be offended by that, but I know that Melissa would love to do a demo. We have in the chat here, we have information from Laura about the meditation group and the library's website, so you might want to grab those links before you sign off for the night. So if anybody wants to go, no hard feelings, have a great night, and we'll hang on for one more demo for Melissa. All right. So Melissa, if you're willing to say a little or type in the chat, no pressure, but if you want to say what's going on with you tonight, that would be great to get us started.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, I am stuck in every way possible. I can't go forward, sideways, or back. I cannot move one step in any direction, any direction at all.
Okay, I hear you, and I so witness you, Melissa. It sounds like you're in a place that we have all been in before, and this is actually exactly the kind of question that I think.
It's never been so bad.
I witness you, Melissa. Yeah, this is exactly the kind of question that I think the tarot is so good for. And it's not that Linda's question was a problem, the choice question or the what should I do question, those are great too. But Melissa's question is such a great example of the now moment question. You know, it's like, I'm stuck now. What do I do now? You know, it's not a big ask. And so when we have kind of that, just a really kind of, it's like a deep question for the now moment, I think we can get a lot from the cards. And both questions are great, don't get me wrong, but you can see how they're kind of at different, just a different vibe. So we'll make up a spread. It's the stuck spread. We'll do 3 cards again. So I'll put it in the first person, like I. So where I am now, why I feel so stuck, how can I get unstuck? So that first card, where I am now, that's kind of like the quality of stuckness, right? Because what each of us has been stuck before, but it has its own flavor each time and for each individual. So there's a quality of the stuckness, and then maybe a deeper reason why, and then trying to move forward. So, okay, awesome. So we'll do another demo. Candle to call in spirit, a bell to say goodbye to unfriendly spirits. So I call on my guides to show me what is in Melissa's highest and best. I call on my guides to show me what's in Melissa's highest and best. I call on my guides to show me what's in Melissa's highest and best. Okay, where she's at, why she's stuck, how she can get unstuck. So I actually put the cards going like vertical to me this time. So this is kind of an idiosyncratic thing, but it's worth mentioning. When I think about the horizontal axis, I think more about time. This is actually, you probably do too. And when I think about the vertical axis, I think more about like conscious, unconscious. So that actually, it's not idiosyncratic at all. You probably think of it that way too, right? Vertical is time. I'm sorry, horizontal is time, vertical is like depth. So this one was a vertical one. And this is actually one of those readings, Melissa, that I mentioned where it's all court cards. So that can be frustrating when you do that type of reading and you might feel like, I don't know how to read it, but I'll walk us through it. So the first card I put in the middle, and this is where she is now. So it's actually the same card that we received for Linda. So it's Heir of Pentacles. But because we know that Melissa feels stuck, this card has a very different flavor now, because we know that in a way, in a sense, it's negative on some level. So what is probably happening, and again, this is Heir of Earth, what's probably happening is that in your mind, Melissa, up here, air, mind, you are over-analyzing certain circumstances of your life, and that's where the stuckness is, right? The stuckness is actually, it's a combination of air and earth. There's the way that you're like thinking about the material circumstances, whether it's money or not, it might be money, it might not be. There's something stagnant there. Maybe you're in a loop, right? A lot of times air energy manifests as like mental loops that we all, it's just like these perseverating thoughts kind of, that like scripts kind of, that we get stuck in, and we all do this. This is not just Melissa, we all do this. So there's the quality of your stuckness seems to have something to do with air and earth, right? Thinking about your material circumstances. Why this is happening is actually interestingly, the corollary. It's the Page of Swords. So now this is Earth of Air. So there is probably what this is, Melissa, is an invitation to get curious. That's the page. Get curious about learning about your thought forms in your mind. So to actually take a step back and to become like a curious student and to say, you know, how many times have I'll use my own example. My thought form is like, I'm never going to make any money. I was a school teacher. I made chicken feed. Now I'm a bartender. Like, so my script is like, you're never going to make any money. You're going to be poor forever. And Page of Swords would be inviting me, maybe he's inviting me now, to ask myself, how many times did I say that to myself today? Really, how many times did I use this script that was so limiting and negative, and this like negative self-talk, right? The page is saying like, write it down, you know, keep a little piece of paper in your pocket, and when you catch yourself having this stagnating loop, put a check mark. And that's the kind of thing that the page would do, because he's like, I'm really curious. I really want to know, like, what's going on in this case, my head, my mind, because that's air, that's swords. Okay, so that's like why, and maybe it's like, I guess the card was why you're stuck, but that's what my intuition's telling me. So we'll go with that. Maybe it's your resistance to embody the Page of Swords is the reason why you're stuck. You can tell me if I'm off base. And then the third card, how I can get unstuck. We got the Knight of Cups, but it's reversed. So in this case, and a lot of times for me with the court cards, when I see a reversal, a lot of times with the court cards, I see that as like a do not, do not do this. So they're like prescription cards for wielding energy. And when it's reversed, it's like, don't do it that way. So it is fire of water, fire of water. So this could be like, yeah, using your fire yang, like willful energy to deal with emotional material that's coming up for you in the cups in water. And so there's some element of that. There's a bird's eye view, right? We've talked so far about earth and air. So there's mental activity around your material circumstances. But somehow the answer for how to deal with that is in this fire and water area. And maybe because it's reversed, maybe you've actually been over expressing fire and water. So maybe you've been getting really weepy or getting really angry. Maybe you've had like tears of anger and that kind of thing. And it's like you're trying to willfully like shift the emotion of being stuck. But that's not actually where the answer is because it was reversed. So this is a pretty dense reading because it's all court cards. So I'm curious if you're willing, Melissa, to weave in your voice in just these last 2 minutes and tell me if you received anything from what I just said, because that was kind of, it's dense with all court cards, but I'll ask you to unmute, and if you can hit unmute if you want to weave in your voice here.
Yeah, hold on. First two cards, very on point, which is interesting because it's exactly what I've been doing. And so tomorrow I know I need to, or I'm going to try and do the opposite. Mm-hmm. The third card, I didn't understand quite honestly.
Yeah,
I just didn't understand.
Oh, did we lose you, Melissa? Seems like we lost her audio. So this is a really interesting example for those who are still with us, because it's like as the reader, I also had a really hard time tapping into what this card was wanting to say to Melissa. And so to me, this is a great example of just as we can choose to like use cards in a conscious way, like putting them on our altar, for example. When you're with a friend and you are in the position of reader, this really, what would happen next from here is that Melissa and I would start talking more about this situation and about what might be coming up here. We might draw more cards and try to really dig into what is wanting to come through this card, because in the time we have, we've run out of time, so we can't do that. But Melissa, please do reach out to me, and maybe we can dig into this more, because yeah, I wasn't sure either. I couldn't really get a handle on it. So it's disappointing maybe, but maybe we can touch base later, Melissa.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I will definitely reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Definitely. This was fabulous.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you could make it. And to those who are still here, thank you so much. This has been really such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we'll cut things off here, but I'll paste my info one more time into the chat so that you can find me and we can keep in touch. Thank you so much, everybody.
Can we do another one of these? Maybe 102?
Yeah, we can explore that. Sure.
I would love that. Wonderful.